Hello, my friend. Tonight, we are going on a journey much farther than the pyramids, farther than ancient Rome, and even farther than the first cities. We are traveling to a time before streets existed, before villages, before walls, before anyone could say the words, "I'm going home." Imagine opening your eyes one morning, not inside a bedroom, but beneath an endless sky. There is no roof above your head, no wooden door to close, no soft mattress waiting for you after a long day. Only the wind, the stars, and the sounds of wild animals somewhere beyond the darkness. For hundreds of thousands of years, this was simply normal. Human beings survived without houses for far longer than they have ever lived inside them. The house, something we hardly think about today, is actually one of humanity's greatest inventions. It protected us from storms. It allowed families to stay together. It helped villages grow into cities. It even changed the way we thought about ourselves. But every great invention has a beginning, and the first chapter begins in a world where home was not a building. Home was wherever the group decided to stop. So dim the lights, settle into your favorite place, and let your imagination wander back to a world without walls. Around 300,000 years ago, early humans lived as hunters and gatherers. They did not own land. They did not build permanent homes. Instead, they followed food. When animals migrated, people followed. When rivers dried up, people moved. Life itself was always moving. Imagine carrying everything you own in your hands. A few stone tools, perhaps a spear, maybe a pouch made from animal skin. Nothing more. There was little reason to build a permanent house because the group might leave within days. Instead, nature provided shelter. A rocky overhang, a cave, a cluster of trees blocking the wind. Even a large fallen log could become tonight's bedroom. Many people imagine prehistoric humans spending their entire lives inside caves. The truth is much more interesting. Most people probably slept outdoors most of the time. Caves were useful, but they were surprisingly rare. Many were already occupied, not by humans, but by bears, lions, hyenas, and other predators. Moving into a cave often meant fighting its previous owner. That was not always worth the risk. Instead, temporary camps became the norm. Some shelters were little more than branches leaning together. Others used mammoth bones covered with animal hides in colder regions. These shelters were simple. They could be built quickly. They could also be abandoned without regret. Nothing lasted forever. The weather controlled everything. Rain meant searching for higher ground. Cold nights required larger fires. Strong winds forced everyone to huddle close together. Fire slowly became the center of every temporary home. It offered warmth, protection from predators, light after sunset, a place to cook food, a place to tell stories. Long before humans built walls, they built circles around fire. In many ways, that glowing fire was humanity's very first living room. People gathered around it every evening. Children learned from older generations. Hunters explained where animals had been seen. Mothers comforted babies. Elders shared memories that slowly became legends. Without realizing it, these nightly gatherings helped shape human language itself. The campfire created conversation. Conversation created culture. Culture eventually created civilization. Sleeping outside was never peaceful in the modern sense. Every strange sound mattered. A snapping branch could mean a deer, or it could mean something far more dangerous. Lions, wolves, hyenas, large cats whose names disappeared thousands of years ago. People often slept close together, not simply for comfort, but for survival. A group looked larger, smelled larger, sounded larger. Predators were more likely to search for easier prey. Even today, humans naturally feel safer surrounded by others. Perhaps that feeling began hundreds of thousands of years ago beside those ancient fires. The night sky also looked very different. Without electric lights, the stars filled every corner above. The Milky Way stretched across the darkness like a glowing river. Ancient people knew every season by watching those stars. They became the world's first calendar. They helped people know when animals would migrate, when fruit might appear, when winter was approaching. The sky itself became part of home. No ceiling has ever been more beautiful. One fascinating discovery comes from sites where archaeologists found circles made from mammoth bones. These enormous bones formed the foundations of prehistoric shelters. Thousands of years before bricks existed, giant animal skeletons helped build homes. It may sound strange today, but people used whatever nature provided: wood, stone, grass, bone, skin. Nothing was wasted. Every successful shelter represented knowledge passed from one generation to another, not through books, but through observation. A child watched an elder build, then repeated the same process years later. This simple act of teaching slowly transformed human survival. The first builders never imagined skyscrapers, yet every modern house can trace its origins back to these humble shelters. As thousands of years passed, humans became better at choosing safe campsites. Water nearby, firewood within walking distance, good visibility against predators, natural protection from wind. These choices sound ordinary, but they reveal something remarkable. People were beginning to think about location rather than simple survival. The idea of a good place to live was quietly taking shape. That idea would eventually become neighborhoods, cities, countries, and civilizations. Yet for now, home still remained temporary. Tomorrow, the entire camp might disappear without leaving much behind. Only footprints, ash from yesterday's fire, and memories carried inside the minds of those who continued walking. The morning arrives quietly. The campfire has burned down to glowing embers. Birdsong replaces the distant calls of night animals. For countless generations, another day would have meant packing everything and moving on, but today, something extraordinary is about to happen. For the first time in human history, people decide not to leave. Instead of following the food, they begin growing it. Instead of searching for shelter, they begin building it. This single decision changes the future forever. Every neighborhood, every village, every city, every castle, every apartment, and every house standing in the world today can trace its story back to this remarkable moment. Welcome to the Neolithic Age, the time when humanity finally stopped wandering and began calling one place home. Around 12,000 years ago, the last great ice age slowly came to an end. The climate became warmer. Huge glaciers were treated. Grasslands expanded. Wild grains grew across many regions. People noticed something curious. Seeds dropped onto the ground eventually became new plants. At first, this may have seemed like magic, but generation after generation, careful observation revealed a simple truth. Plants could be grown on purpose. Wheat, barley, lentils, peas. Food no longer had to be hunted every day. For the first time, families could stay in one place for months, then years. But permanent food required permanent shelter. The temporary tents and branches that had served wandering hunters were no longer enough. If your fields remained in one place, your home needed to remain there too. The earliest houses were wonderfully simple. Imagine walking into one of these villages. You would not find wide streets or towering buildings. Instead, small houses stood close together. Most were built from materials gathered nearby.
Wooden poles formed the frame. Mud mixed with straw covered the walls. Reeds created roofs. Everything came from nature. Nothing traveled very far. If a house became damaged, repairs were usually made using the very earth beneath your feet. This is why archaeologists often call them mud brick houses. The bricks were made by mixing clay, water, straw, and sometimes animal dung. The mixture was shaped into blocks and left under the hot sun until it hardened. No giant factories, no machines, only human hands. These humble bricks became one of the greatest building materials in history. Even thousands of years later, many people around the world still build homes using similar methods.
Inside, life was surprisingly organized. The floor might be carefully packed earth, sometimes smooth clay, sometimes covered with woven mats. There was usually a fireplace near the center. Smoke drifted upward through small openings in the roof. Unlike modern homes, there were often very few windows. Openings allowed cold air, rain, and unwanted animals inside. Keeping the house warm mattered far more than letting in sunlight. The rooms were small, very small. An entire family often lived, cooked, worked, and slept inside a single space. Privacy, as we understand it today, simply did not exist. Everyone shared nearly everything. Children played beside grandparents. Meals were prepared only a few steps away from sleeping areas. Daily life unfolded together. Inside, furniture was almost non-existent. No couches, no dining tables, no wardrobes. People often sat directly on raised platforms made from packed earth. These same platforms became beds at night. Animal skins, woven reeds, or simple blankets provided a little comfort. Storage baskets lined the walls. Clay pots protected grain from insects. Every object had a purpose. Nothing decorative unless it carried deep meaning. Yet these homes were not empty. Many contained carefully painted walls. Some displayed geometric designs. Others featured animal images. Even the earliest homeowners wanted beauty alongside usefulness. It reminds us that people have always appreciated art, even in the simplest surroundings. One of the world's most fascinating early villages was built in what is now modern-day Turkey. Thousands of people lived there over 9,000 years ago. The houses stood so closely together that there were almost no streets. Instead, people walked across the rooftops. Imagine climbing a ladder every evening to enter your home through an opening in the roof. That opening served several purposes. It let in light, it allowed smoke to escape, it also acted as the front door. Neighbors passed one another while walking above the village instead of below. It must have looked like an endless patchwork of flat rooftops stretching across the landscape. From above, the village almost resembled a giant honeycomb. Animals also became permanent neighbors. Dogs had already begun helping humans thousands of years earlier. Now sheep, goats, pigs, and cattle lived nearby as well. Some stayed in fenced areas beside the house. Others were brought indoors during harsh weather. Imagine sharing your evenings with chickens quietly settling down while goats rested nearby. The smells were certainly stronger than anything we experience today. But keeping animals close provided safety. They supplied milk, wool, meat, leather, and valuable fertilizer for growing crops. The house had become more than shelter. It had become the center of an entire way of life. As villages grew larger, people discovered new challenges. Living close together meant diseases spread more easily. Waste needed careful disposal. Clean water became increasingly important. Some communities dug wells, others settled near rivers. Planning slowly became part of construction. Where should houses stand? How close together? Where should food be stored? Questions that city planners still ask today had already begun thousands of years ago. The idea of ownership also quietly emerged. When families built sturdy houses that lasted many years, something changed inside the human mind. This is my house. This is our field. These are our animals. For wandering hunters, possessions remained limited. But farmers accumulated more tools, more pottery, more stored grain, more belongings. Homes gradually became places where wealth could be seen. Larger houses often belonged to larger families or more successful farmers. Architecture was beginning to reflect social differences. Not dramatically yet, but the first signs had appeared. Children born inside these villages experienced something their distant ancestors never had. They grew up in the same place. They recognized familiar paths, the same trees, the same neighbors, the same fields stretching towards the horizon. Memories became connected to places rather than journeys. A particular doorway, a certain fireplace, a favorite corner of the house. Home was becoming emotional, not merely practical. Even today, many adults remember childhood homes long after those buildings disappear. That feeling may have begun here, in these first farming villages. Building a house also became a community event. Neighbors helped raise wooden beams. Families mixed mud together. Children carried bundles of straw. No one worked entirely alone. Constructing a home strengthened friendships. A finished house represented many helping hands. This tradition survives even now. Across the world, friends and relatives still gather to celebrate new homes. The materials have changed. The emotions have not. As centuries passed, villages became larger. Larger villages became towns. Towns slowly developed marketplaces. Craftsmen specialized in pottery. Others made tools. Others wove cloth. People no longer needed to produce everything themselves. The house gradually transformed from a simple shelter into the center of work, family, trade, and daily life. Without realizing it, humanity had taken its first step towards civilization. The journey that began beneath open skies had reached an entirely new chapter. People no longer wondered where they would sleep tonight. Instead, they wondered how they could make tomorrow's home even better. And with that simple question, the history of houses truly began. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine standing in one of the world's first great cities. The air is warm. Children laugh somewhere beyond a narrow alley. A baker is shaping fresh bread before sunrise. A potter carefully spins wet clay into jars. Water splashes softly as someone washes the courtyard floor. Unlike the small farming villages we visited before, this place feels alive in a completely different way. Thousands of people live here. Each family has a home. Each neighborhood has its own rhythm. The simple mud houses of the first farmers have slowly evolved into something far more organized. The world's earliest civilizations are learning that a house can be much more than four walls and a roof. It can provide comfort, privacy, security, and even beauty. Tonight, we step inside the homes of three remarkable civilizations: ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley. Although separated by hundreds or even thousands of miles, each discovered unique ways to create places that people proudly called home. Our journey begins beside one of the world's greatest rivers, the Nile. Every year, the river flooded its banks, leaving behind rich, black soil perfect for farming. But the floodwaters also left something else: fine clay. This clay became the foundation of countless Egyptian homes. Unlike the enormous stone pyramids that still stand today, ordinary Egyptians rarely lived in stone houses. Stone was expensive and difficult to carve. Instead, most families built their homes using sun-dried mud bricks. Workers mixed Nile mud with straw and water. The mixture was pressed into wooden molds. Then the bricks rested under the hot Egyptian sun until they became surprisingly strong. The process required patience rather than expensive tools. It was practical, reliable, and well suited to Egypt's dry climate. Walking through an Egyptian village, you would notice rows of flat-roofed homes standing close together. Many were 1 or 2 stories high. The roofs were not just roofs, they served as extra living space. During cool evenings, families often climbed upstairs to enjoy fresh air beneath a sky filled with brilliant stars. Children played there, laundry dried there. Sometimes people even slept there during especially hot nights. Without modern air conditioning, every cool breeze was precious. The roof became another room, only without walls. Inside, Egyptian homes were modest but carefully arranged. The entrance usually opened into a central living space. Nearby stood a simple kitchen where bread was baked every day. Large clay ovens filled the air with the comforting smell of warm grain. Bread formed the foundation of nearly every meal. Alongside bread came onions, beans, dates, fish from the Nile, and occasionally meat during festivals. Clay jars lined the walls. Some stored grain. Others held oil, beer, or water. Every container had an important purpose. Waste was not an option. Replacing broken pottery required valuable time and effort.
Furniture was simple, yet surprisingly elegant. Low wooden stools, small tables, storage chests, beds raised slightly above the floor. Instead of thick mattresses, woven reeds supported sleeping mats. Headrests made from carved wood or stone lifted the sleeper's head instead of soft pillows. At first glance, they seem uncomfortable, yet millions of Egyptians used them every night for centuries. Comfort, after all, often depends upon what one grows accustomed to. Now, let us travel eastward, beyond deserts and mountains, toward the fertile lands between 2 mighty rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. This region became known as Mesopotamia. Here, some of humanity's earliest cities rose from the plains. Cities like Ur and Babylon bustled with merchants, craftsmen, priests, and farmers. As populations increased, houses became increasingly crowded together. Narrow, winding streets twisted between rows of mud brick homes. Unlike many modern cities designed around straight roads, Mesopotamian neighborhoods grew gradually over generations. Every family expanded its house whenever possible. Sometimes a new room appeared, sometimes another floor. The city evolved almost organically, like a living thing. One remarkable feature appeared inside many Mesopotamian homes: the courtyard. Rather than placing windows towards the busy street, builders created open spaces at the center of the house. Sunlight poured downward. Fresh air circulated naturally. Children played safely within these protected spaces. Women prepared meals.
Families gathered together after long days of work. The courtyard became the heart of daily life. This clever design also helped keep rooms cooler during scorching summers. Even today, courtyard homes remain common across many hot regions of the world. Some architectural ideas simply never become outdated. Privacy mattered greatly in Mesopotamian society. Street-facing walls often contained very few windows. Passers-by could see little of family life. Instead, everything important happened around the private courtyard. Neighbors might hear laughter drifting over the walls. They might smell fresh bread baking nearby. But they could rarely see inside. The house offered a peaceful retreat from the busy city outside. A concept that still feels familiar today. Our final destination tonight takes us even farther east, to the remarkable cities of the Indus Valley. Places like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa astonish archaeologists even now. Because over 4,000 years ago, these cities possessed features many later civilizations lacked. Their streets followed orderly grids. Houses connected to sophisticated drainage systems. Some homes even had private bathrooms. Imagine that. Thousands of years before modern plumbing became common, people were already thinking carefully about cleanliness and sanitation. It was an extraordinary achievement. Most Indus Valley houses were built from baked bricks rather than sun-dried ones. The bricks were fired in kilns, making them stronger and more resistant to rain.
Builders followed standardized sizes. This may sound ordinary, but it required careful planning. Imagine an entire civilization agreeing that every brick should be nearly identical. Construction became faster. Repairs became easier. Cities appeared remarkably organized. It was engineering on an impressive scale. Many homes had 2 stories. Some included staircases leading upward. Private wells supplied clean water. Bathrooms drained into covered sewers beneath the streets. These underground channels carried wastewater away from neighborhoods. Even today, many ancient cities amaze visitors because of their advanced sanitation systems. The people of the Indus Valley clearly understood something important. A healthy city begins with clean homes.
Although these 3 civilizations developed independently, they shared remarkable similarities. Each relied on local building materials. Each adapted homes to local climates. Each placed family life at the center of the house. Whether beside the Nile, the Euphrates, or the Indus, people gathered each evening to cook, talk, rest, and sleep beneath familiar roofs. The language changed, the clothing changed, the gods they worshipped were different. Yet the feeling of returning home after a long day's work remained wonderfully familiar. Some experiences are simply timeless. As cities grew larger, houses became more than shelters. They reflected occupation, wealth, status, culture. A merchant's home differed from a farmer's. A priest's residence differed from an artisan's. Architecture quietly revealed the story of the people living inside. Without speaking a single word, a house could already tell visitors much about its owners. That idea would only grow stronger in the centuries ahead. Soon, entire civilizations would compete not only through armies or trade, but through architecture itself. Magnificent villas, grand courtyards, marble columns, and luxurious gardens were waiting just over the horizon. Our next journey will lead us into the elegant homes of ancient Greece and mighty Rome, where ordinary houses became works of art and where many features of modern homes first began to appear.
Imagine waking just as the first rays of sunlight spill across a quiet courtyard. You hear the gentle splash of water from a small fountain. Somewhere nearby, a servant sweeps the stone floor with slow, careful strokes. The smell of fresh bread drifts through the air. Beyond the walls, merchants are already opening their shops, while horses pull wooden carts along narrow streets paved with stone. You are no longer in the mud brick villages of the ancient world. Tonight, we have arrived in 2 civilizations that transformed the idea of home into something both practical and elegant. Ancient Greece, and later, ancient Rome. Here, a house was no longer simply a place to survive. It became a reflection of family, status, culture, and daily life. Many ideas we associate with homes today, private bedrooms, dining rooms, indoor decoration, and beautiful gardens, began taking shape in these remarkable societies. Our journey begins in ancient Greece. Greek cities were often built around hills overlooking the sea. The streets wound between whitewashed houses, small workshops, and lively marketplaces known as agoras. From the outside, many homes appeared surprisingly plain. Simple stone or mud brick walls faced the street. Small windows were placed high above eye level. Large wooden doors offered little hint of what lay inside. Privacy mattered greatly. Life inside the house belonged to the family alone. Imagine waking just as the first rays of sunlight spill across a quiet courtyard. You hear the gentle splash of water from a small fountain. Somewhere nearby, a servant sweeps the stone floor with slow, careful strokes. The smell of fresh bread drifts through the air. Beyond the walls, merchants are already opening their shops, while horses pull wooden carts along narrow streets paved with stone. You are no longer in the mud brick villages of the ancient world. Tonight, we have arrived in 2 civilizations that transformed the idea of home into something both practical and elegant. Ancient Greece, and later, ancient Rome. Here, a house was no longer simply a place to survive.
It became a reflection of family, status, culture, and daily life. Many ideas we associate with homes today, private bedrooms, dining rooms, indoor decoration, and beautiful gardens, began taking shape in these remarkable societies. Our journey begins in ancient Greece. Greek cities were often built around hills overlooking the sea. The streets wound between whitewashed houses, small workshops, and lively marketplaces known as agoras. From the outside, many homes appeared surprisingly plain. Simple stone or mud brick walls faced the street. Small windows were placed high above eye level. Large wooden doors offered little hint of what lay inside. Privacy mattered greatly. Life inside the house belonged to the family alone.
Stepping through the doorway, however, revealed an entirely different world. At the center stood an open courtyard. Sunlight filled the space throughout the day. Rainwater collected in small basins. Potted plants added color and fragrance. Family members gathered here for meals, conversations, and celebrations. Children played safely while adults worked nearby. Nearly every room opened towards this peaceful courtyard. Rather than facing the noisy street, the house turned inward, creating a calm and protected environment. It was an oasis of quiet within a busy city. Greek homes were carefully organized. The kitchen was usually simple, with clay ovens and cooking pots. Storage rooms held grain, olive oil, dried herbs, and wine. Sleeping areas remained modest. Beds often consisted of wooden frames topped with woven ropes, supporting blankets or stuffed mattresses made from wool. Furniture remained lightweight and practical. Wooden stools, small tables, storage chests, nothing excessive, yet everything reflected careful craftsmanship. The Greeks believed beauty could be found through balance rather than extravagance. Even ordinary objects displayed graceful proportions. Hospitality held an important place in Greek society. Visitors were welcomed warmly. A guest might receive bread, cheese, olives, fresh fruit, and watered wine before any serious conversation began. Offering food and shelter was considered both polite and honorable. The home became not only a private retreat, but also a place where friendships and community were strengthened. Even today, many cultures continue this tradition of welcoming guests with generous meals. As centuries passed, another civilization rose to even greater heights: Rome. The Romans admired much of Greek culture, but they also expanded it dramatically. Their cities grew larger. Their roads stretched across continents, and their houses became increasingly sophisticated. Walking through ancient Rome, you would discover that not everyone lived the same way. The wealthy occupied spacious homes called domus. The poor often lived inside crowded apartment buildings known as insulae. This difference shaped everyday life in fascinating ways. Let us first visit a Roman domus. From the street, its entrance appeared strong and dignified. Stepping inside, visitors entered a grand reception hall called the atrium. High above, an opening in the roof allowed sunlight to stream into the room. When rain fell, water dripped into a shallow pool below. This pool, known as the impluvium, collected precious rainwater for household use. It was beautiful, practical, and remarkably clever. The Romans loved combining function with elegance. Beyond the atrium lay another open courtyard. This one often featured carefully maintained gardens. Colorful flowers bloomed beside marble statues. Small fountains cooled the air. Birds fluttered among shrubs and fruit trees. For wealthy Romans, nature became part of the architecture itself. Rather than escaping into gardens outside the city, they brought gardens inside their homes. The result felt peaceful despite the crowded streets beyond the walls. Roman dining rooms reflected another unique custom. Guests did not usually sit upright around a table. Instead, many reclined on cushioned couches around low tables. Meals could last for hours. Conversation flowed slowly. Courses arrived one after another. Fresh bread, fish, vegetables, fruit, honey cakes, wine.
Dinner became entertainment as much as nourishment. Stories were told, poems recited, business discussed, friendships strengthened. The dining room served as one of the social centers of Roman life. Bedrooms remained surprisingly small. They were intended mainly for sleeping. Most daily activities occurred elsewhere in the house. Walls often displayed colorful frescoes, painted directly onto wet plaster. Scenes showed gardens, mountains, birds, mythological heroes, or peaceful countryside landscapes. Even windowless rooms could appear bright and open through artistic illusion. Many of these paintings survive today beneath the volcanic ash that buried Pompeii nearly 2,000 years ago. They remind us how much Romans valued beauty inside everyday spaces. Not everyone enjoyed such comfortable surroundings. Most Romans belonged to the working class. Many lived inside tall apartment buildings called insulae. These structures could rise several stories above the crowded streets. The lower floors, built from stronger materials, often housed shops. Families occupied the upper levels. Life there was far less comfortable. Apartments were small. Water usually had to be carried upstairs. Cooking often took place over the open flames. Fire spread easily through wooden upper floors. Building collapses were not uncommon. For poorer citizens, home could be both crowded and dangerous. Yet these apartments allowed thousands of people to live within busy cities. They were among history's earliest examples of urban housing.
One Roman invention changed homes forever: running water. Thanks to magnificent aqueducts stretching for many miles, fresh water flowed into cities every day. Public fountains supplied neighborhoods. Wealthier homes even received water through lead pipes. Baths became an important part of Roman culture. While private bathrooms existed mainly in richer houses, enormous public bathhouses welcomed citizens from nearly every social class. Cleanliness became woven into daily life in ways few earlier civilizations had experienced. Heating also improved. Some wealthy Roman homes used an ingenious system called the hypocast. Hot air from a furnace traveled beneath raised floors and inside hollow walls. The warmth spread gently through the building during cold months. It functioned much like modern underfloor heating. Although expensive, it demonstrated Roman engineering at its finest. Even today, many modern heating systems follow similar principles. The Roman house reflected more than wealth. It reflected order. Every room had a purpose. Every courtyard served multiple functions. Every decorative detail expressed harmony between architecture and daily life. Visitors immediately understood the family's position in society simply by walking through the front door. Home had become a statement, not merely a shelter. Yet, despite all their impressive engineering, beautiful paintings, and elegant courtyards, Greek and Roman homes shared something deeply familiar with every house before them. At sunset, families still gathered together. Parents still comforted sleepy children. Neighbors still visited one another. Meals were still shared. Stories were still told before bedtime. Across thousands of years, the walls changed, the furniture changed, the technology improved, but the quiet comfort of returning home after a long day remained wonderfully unchanged. As the Roman Empire slowly faded, however, many of these grand houses disappeared. Europe entered a new age. Cities shrank, castles rose, wood replaced marble, smoke filled dark rooms, and ordinary life became far harsher than before. Our next chapter takes us into the cold, crowded, and smoky homes of the Middle Ages.
The sun has disappeared behind thick grey clouds. A cold wind sweeps across open fields. Rain begins to fall, gently at first, then steadily against wooden walls. Somewhere in the distance, the bell of a small village church echoes through the evening air. One by one, families hurry indoors before darkness settles over the countryside. The heavy wooden door closes. A simple wooden bar slides into place. Inside, the room grows warm, not because it is comfortable, but because a fire burns constantly at its center. Smoke slowly rises towards the roof. Some escapes through a small opening above. Much of it does not. It hangs quietly beneath the rafters, filling the room with the smell of burning wood. For the people of medieval Europe, this was simply home. Tonight, we leave behind the elegant villas of Rome and enter a very different world. A world of timber cottages, stone castles, thatched roofs, drafty walls, and long winters. The Middle Ages lasted for nearly 1,000 years, and during that time, the house became both a shelter from nature and a defense against uncertainty. Life was harder. Homes were simpler. Yet within those humble walls, families laughed, worked, celebrated, and dreamed, just as they always had. Most people in medieval Europe were farmers. They lived in small villages scattered across forests, rivers, and open farmland. Their houses were built almost entirely from materials found nearby. Thick wooden beams formed the frame. The spaces between them were filled with woven branches covered in a mixture of mud, straw, and animal dung.
This technique, known today as wattle and daub, created walls that were inexpensive and surprisingly durable. Roofs were usually covered with bundles of straw or reeds. These thatched roofs kept out rain fairly well, but they also came with dangers. A single spark from the fireplace could turn an entire house into flames. Fire was one of the greatest fears of every medieval village. Most cottages contained only one main room. There was no hallway, no separate living room, no private bedrooms. Everything happened in the same space. People cooked there, worked there, ate there, and slept there. At night, straw mattresses or simple blankets were spread across the floor. In many homes, parents, children, and even grandparents slept side by side. Privacy was almost unknown. Family life unfolded together from sunrise until bedtime. The fireplace stood at the center of the house. In the earliest medieval homes, there was often no chimney at all. The fire burned on a flat stone hearth in the middle of the room. Smoke drifted upward, searching for small holes in the roof. Some escaped. Much remained inside. The air became thick with smoke, especially during winter when doors and shutters stayed closed. Visitors from today would probably find it difficult to breathe, but medieval families became accustomed to it. Over time, chimneys slowly became more common, making homes healthier and more comfortable. It was a small improvement that made a remarkable difference. Furniture remained simple. A sturdy wooden table often served many purposes. Meals were eaten there, tools were repaired there, clothes were sewn there, children learned basic skills there. Benches surrounded the table during the day. At night, some family members even slept upon them. Storage chests held clothing, blankets, and treasured possessions. These chests were valuable because they could also serve as seats or tables. Every object inside the house needed to perform more than one task. Nothing was wasted.
Windows looked very different from those we know today. Glass was rare and expensive. Most ordinary homes had small openings covered by wooden shutters or thin pieces of animal skin. During winter, shutters remained tightly closed to keep out icy winds. As a result, medieval houses were often dark, even during daylight hours. Candles provided light after sunset, but they were precious. Many families relied mainly on the glow of the fireplace. The flickering flames created long shadows dancing across rough wooden walls. It must have been both peaceful and mysterious.
Even grand fireplaces struggled to warm such enormous spaces. Kings and nobles lived in castles, but luxury was often limited. Warm clothing and thick blankets remained essential throughout much of the year. Despite these hardships, castles contained impressive features. The Great Hall served as the heart of noble life. Long wooden tables filled the room during feasts. Musicians played lively melodies. Traveling storytellers entertained guests. Important meetings took place before roaring fires. The Great Hall was the dining room, courtroom, celebration space, and political center all at once. Even the grandest homes still revolved around gathering together. Some traditions never changed. As the centuries passed, towns slowly began to grow again. Merchants became wealthier. Craftsmen formed guilds. New types of houses appeared. Many town homes included shops on the ground floor and living quarters above. Families could work and live in the same building. The streets became busier. Commerce flourished. Gradually, homes became more specialized. Separate kitchens, private sleeping chambers, larger windows, brick chimneys. Each generation introduced small improvements that quietly transformed everyday life.
Perhaps the greatest lesson of medieval homes is not their simplicity, but their resilience. People endured freezing winters, failed harvests, diseases, wars, and uncertainty. Yet every evening they still returned home. Someone stirred soup over the fire. Someone mended clothing by candlelight. Children listened to stories before falling asleep. Neighbors helped rebuild damaged cottages after storms. Life was difficult, but home remained a place of hope. Even the smallest cottage offered protection against a world that often felt unpredictable. By the end of the Middle Ages, Europe and much of the world was beginning to change once again. Trade routes expanded. New ideas spread. Architects experimented with larger windows, stronger buildings, and more comfortable interiors. Across Asia and the Islamic world, magnificent homes with peaceful gardens, elegant courtyards, and graceful wooden architecture were reaching new heights of beauty. Our next journey will take us eastward, where houses became masterpieces of harmony between nature, climate, and daily life.
Take a slow, deep breath. The cold stone castles of medieval Europe slowly fade behind us. The smoky cottages disappear into the distance. Now, imagine the sound of water gently flowing through a quiet garden. A cool breeze carries the sweet scent of jasmine. Leaves rustle softly above your head. Somewhere nearby, a bamboo fountain gently tips forward. Clack. Before filling again. The world feels calm, balanced, peaceful. Tonight, our journey brings us across Asia and the Islamic world, where builders discovered something remarkable. A house did not have to fight against nature. Instead, it could live in harmony with it. Whether in the elegant wooden homes of Japan, the peaceful courtyard houses of China, the colorful residences of Persia, or the shaded homes of the Ottoman Empire, one idea connected them all. A home should bring peace to the people living inside. Rather than separating humans from the natural world, these houses invited sunlight, fresh air, gardens, and flowing water to become part of everyday life. Our first stop is ancient China. For thousands of years, Chinese builders believed that the layout of the house could influence the happiness and prosperity of the family. Every wall, every doorway, every courtyard was carefully planned. One of the most famous traditional house designs was the Si Yuan, a home built around a large central courtyard. From the outside, the walls appeared simple and private. But inside, everything opened towards a peaceful garden. Children played beneath fruit trees, grandparents rested in the shade, birds sang among flowering plants. The courtyard became the heart of family life. Unlike noisy streets outside, this private space felt quiet and protected. Chinese homes also reflected deep respect for family. Several generations often lived together under one roof. Grandparents, parents, children, sometimes even great-grandparents.
Each generation had its own room, but everyone gathered together for meals and important celebrations. The oldest family members usually occupied the most honored position within the house. Architecture quietly expressed respect. The house itself reminded everyone of their place within the family. Builders also paid careful attention to natural balance. Many followed the ancient practice known as feng shui. Mountains, rivers, sunlight, wind. Even the direction of the front door could influence the design. Although modern science explains buildings differently, feng shui reflected a timeless human desire. People wanted their homes to feel peaceful, comfortable, and connected to the world around them. Now let us cross the sea to Japan. Here, houses looked completely different. Instead of heavy stone walls, many homes were built almost entirely from wood. Japan experiences frequent earthquakes. Heavy buildings could collapse more easily. Light wooden frames offered greater flexibility. They moved gently with the earth instead of resisting it. Builders had learned to work with nature rather than against it. Sliding paper doors, known as shoji, divided rooms instead of thick walls. These delicate screens allowed soft sunlight to fill the house with a warm, gentle glow. Rooms could easily change their purpose. During the day, a room might serve as a place for conversation or tea. At night, soft futons were unrolled across the floor for sleeping. In the morning, they were carefully folded away. One room could become many different rooms depending upon the time of day. It was a wonderfully practical use of limited space. Visitors entering a Japanese home removed their shoes before stepping inside. This tradition helped keep floors clean. Tatami mats made from woven straw covered many rooms. Walking across them produced a gentle, comforting sound. The scent of fresh straw filled the air. Even today, many traditional Japanese homes continue this peaceful custom. Some traditions survive because they simply work beautifully. Gardens held special importance. Even the smallest garden was carefully designed. A few carefully placed stones, a tiny pond, a curved bridge, a single flowering tree. Nothing appeared random.
Every element encouraged quiet reflection. Many people believed that simply sitting beside the garden could calm the mind after a busy day. The boundary between indoors and outdoors almost disappeared. Nature became another room of the house. Now we travel westward into Persia, modern-day Iran. Here, builders faced a different challenge: intense summer heat. To remain comfortable without electricity, they developed remarkable architectural solutions. Many Persian homes centered around beautiful courtyards filled with trees and fountains. Water cooled the surrounding air through evaporation. Tall wind catchers, known as badgirs, captured breezes high above the rooftops and directed cool air downward into the rooms below. Without fans, without air conditioners, only clever engineering. Some Persian houses remained surprisingly cool even during the hottest afternoons. It was architecture working hand in hand with nature. Decorations reflected extraordinary craftsmanship. Walls displayed colorful tiles. Delicate geometric patterns covered ceilings. Wooden doors featured intricate carvings. Unlike many European homes of the same era, Persian architecture often emphasized graceful symmetry and peaceful beauty rather than heavy fortification. The house became a place for rest, hospitality, learning, and conversation. Hospitality itself held great importance throughout the Islamic world. Guests were treated with deep respect. The finest cushions were brought forward. Fresh tea was served. Dates, fruit, sweets, and warm bread welcomed visitors. Offering generous hospitality was considered both an honor and a responsibility. The house was not merely private. It was a place where kindness could be shared with strangers and friends alike. Farther west, within the vast Ottoman Empire, homes combined influences from Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. Many featured large wooden balconies overlooking narrow streets. Upper floors often extended slightly beyond the lower walls, creating more living space while providing welcome shade below. Windows filled entire rooms with sunlight. Colorful carpets covered polished wooden floors. Low cushions surrounded family gathering spaces. Comfort came through thoughtful design rather than expensive furniture. Water remained one of the most treasured features. Courtyard fountains cooled the air.
The gentle sound of flowing water created a peaceful atmosphere. Even in crowded cities, stepping inside one of these homes often felt like entering a hidden garden. Outside, the streets bustled with merchants, travelers, and craftsmen. Inside, quiet beauty awaited. The contrast was intentional. The house offered calm in a busy world. Across Asia and the Islamic world, one lesson appears again and again. Builders carefully observed their environment. Where did the wind come from? How hot were the summers? How cold were the winters? Where did sunlight fall throughout the day? Instead of forcing nature to obey them, they adapted their homes to local conditions. These ideas continue influencing architects today. Modern eco-friendly homes often borrow principles that are thousands of years old. Natural ventilation, courtyards, shaded windows, green gardens, sustainable materials. Sometimes the oldest ideas become the newest once again. As evening falls across these remarkable homes, families gather together just as they always have. A kettle quietly boils for tea. Children laugh in the courtyard. The scent of fresh bread drifts through open windows. Lanterns begin glowing softly against carved wooden walls. Some people read poetry. Others tell stories.
Others simply enjoy the peaceful silence. No matter the country, no matter the language, every home shares one simple purpose: to offer comfort at the end of the day, to give people a place where they belong. Yet the world was changing rapidly. Great ships crossed vast oceans. New continents were explored. Empires expanded across distant lands. People carried their building traditions with them, blending old ideas with new landscapes. Soon, houses would begin appearing in places Europeans had never seen before. The next chapter of our journey follows homes across the age of exploration and the great colonial world, where architecture travelled farther than ever before.
The world is becoming larger, or perhaps it only feels that way. For thousands of years, most people lived and died within a few miles of where they were born. Their houses were built using local wood, local stone, local traditions, and local knowledge passed down through generations. But now, beginning in the late 15th century, ships are sailing farther than ever before. Their white sails disappear beyond the horizon. Months later, they return carrying unfamiliar plants, exotic animals, new ideas, and people from distant lands. As explorers crossed oceans, houses began traveling too. Not the buildings themselves, of course, but the ideas behind them. Architectural styles that had developed over centuries in Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East suddenly found themselves adapting to completely different climates and landscapes. Tonight, we follow these remarkable journeys, discovering how homes changed as civilizations met one another across the world. Our first stop is the rugged coastline of North America. When European settlers arrived, they encountered vast forests stretching farther than the eye could see. Unlike many parts of Europe, timber was plentiful. Stone was harder to transport, so wood became the obvious choice. The earliest colonial homes were often small log cabins. Builders stacked heavy logs one upon another, carefully cutting notches at each end so the walls locked together. Gaps between the logs were filled with clay, moss, or straw to block the cold wind. The roofs were steep, allowing heavy snow to slide off during winter. These cabins were simple, strong, and surprisingly warm. Many families built them with the help of neighbors in just a few days. It was hard work, but it created a sense of community that lasted for generations.
Inside, life remained modest. A single fireplace heated the entire cabin. The kitchen, dining area, living room, and bedroom often occupied the same space. Furniture was handmade: tables, benches, beds, shelves. Every piece reflected practical craftsmanship rather than decoration. The house existed to help families survive long winters and uncertain harvests. Comfort came second.
As settlements grew into towns, houses became larger. Brick chimneys replaced simple stone fireplaces. Glass windows became more common. Separate bedrooms slowly appeared. Families who prospered built elegant homes, inspired by the architecture they had left behind in England, France, Spain, or the Netherlands. Yet these European designs rarely remained unchanged. The new environment demanded adaptation. Wide porches offered shade during hot summers. Larger windows welcomed cooling breezes. Builders learned from both experience and local traditions. The landscape itself became an architect. Farther south, in warmer climates, plantation houses emerged. These large houses often stood upon raised foundations to protect them from damp ground and seasonal flooding. Broad verandas wrapped around the building, providing shade throughout the day. Tall ceilings allowed hot air to rise above the living spaces. Large windows encouraged natural ventilation. Without electricity, every breeze mattered. The architecture quietly worked with the climate. Sadly, these grand houses also remind us of one of history's darkest chapters. Many plantations depended upon the labor of enslaved people who were forced to work under cruel and inhumane conditions.
The beauty of these buildings cannot be separated from the suffering that helped create them. History often contains both remarkable achievements and painful injustices. Understanding both allows us to see the past more honestly. Across Central and South America, Spanish and Portuguese settlers introduced another style of home. Many houses centered around shaded courtyards filled with trees and fountains. Thick stone or adobe walls kept interiors pleasantly cool. Red clay roof tiles reflected intense sunlight while protecting rooms below from heavy seasonal rains. These homes blended European traditions with local materials and indigenous knowledge. The result was an architectural style uniquely suited to the region. Even today, many historic cities preserve these beautiful courtyard houses. Not all new homes came from Europe alone. Indigenous peoples across the Americas already possessed remarkable architectural traditions. Some communities built longhouses capable of sheltering dozens of family members beneath one roof. Others constructed circular earth lodges insulated against freezing winters. In the deserts of the American Southwest, multi-story adobe pueblos rose from sun-baked clay, blending almost perfectly into the surrounding landscape. Each reflected generations of careful observation. Builders understood the climate intimately. They knew how to remain warm in winter, cool in summer, and protected throughout the changing seasons. Their knowledge continues inspiring architects today. Meanwhile, across the oceans, trade transformed homes in Asia and Africa as well. Imported glass became more affordable. Decorative ceramics traveled thousands of miles. Hardwoods from tropical forests appeared inside distant palaces. Homes gradually filled with objects collected from around the world. For wealthy families, the house became a showcase of global connections. A Chinese porcelain vase might stand beside a Persian carpet.
An Indian textile could cover a European table. The age of exploration connected not only continents, but living rooms. As cities expanded, another important change appeared. Rows of townhouses lined busy streets. Built wall to wall, they saved valuable space while creating orderly neighborhoods. Each family owned a narrow slice of land, yet together the houses formed elegant streets stretching into the distance. Many featured small gardens behind the house. Others included workshops where blacksmiths, tailors, bakers, or carpenters earned their living. Home and workplace often remained closely connected. Throughout this period, fireplaces continued to improve. Brick chimneys became safer and more efficient. Glass windows admitted more sunlight while keeping out cold winds.
Iron stoves gradually appeared in some regions, providing better heating and more reliable cooking. Small technological improvements quietly transformed daily life. People spent less time gathering fuel. Homes became cleaner. Rooms became warmer. Comfort increased almost one invention at a time. The meaning of home also continued evolving. It was no longer simply a place for sleeping or storing food. It became a symbol of success. A family's house reflected its profession, its traditions, its ambitions, and sometimes even its travels across distant oceans. Architecture had become a language without words. Visitors could often understand much about a family simply by stepping through the front door. As the 18th century drew towards its close, an even greater transformation waited just beyond the horizon. Factories began rising above city skylines. Steam engines filled the air with unfamiliar sounds. Millions of people left the countryside in search of work. The quiet rhythm of village life gave way to crowded industrial cities. And once again, the history of houses would change forever. Our next chapter takes us into the Industrial Revolution, a time when modern homes, apartment buildings, indoor plumbing, electricity, and urban life began reshaping how billions of people lived.
Listen carefully. The peaceful sounds of birds and flowing rivers begin to fade. In their place comes a different rhythm. The distant whistle of a steam engine, the steady turning of enormous factory wheels, the clatter of horse-drawn wagons carrying coal through narrow streets. A city is waking up. Not the ancient cities of Egypt, nor the quiet villages of medieval Europe, but a new kind of city, one built by machines. During the Industrial Revolution, beginning in the late 18th century, humanity experienced one of the greatest transformations in history. For thousands of years, most homes had changed only gradually. A better roof here, a larger window there. But now, everything began changing at once. Factories produced bricks by the millions. Glass became cheaper. Iron strengthened buildings. Pipes carried clean water. Gas lights pushed back the darkness. Later, electricity would illuminate every corner of the home. For the first time, ordinary families could dream of comforts that had once belonged only to kings. Tonight, we step inside the houses that quietly gave birth to the modern world. As factories spread across Europe and North America, millions of people left farms behind. They moved into growing industrial cities in search of work. Cities expanded faster than anyone had imagined. Rows of identical brick houses appeared almost overnight. These simple homes became known as terraced houses or row houses. Built side by side, they shared walls with neighboring homes. This design reduced construction costs and helped conserve valuable land. From above, entire streets looked like perfectly arranged patterns stretching towards the horizon. For many workers, these modest houses represented opportunity. But they also brought new challenges.
Industrial cities quickly became crowded. Entire families often lived in only 2 or 3 small rooms. Parents, children, sometimes grandparents, all sharing limited space. Privacy remained rare. Factories operated long hours, and many workers returned home exhausted after 12 or even 14 hours of labor. The house became a place for rest rather than work. For the first time in history, many people earned their living somewhere completely separate from where they lived. Home and workplace slowly drifted apart. Despite crowded conditions, these new homes introduced remarkable improvements. Brick walls were stronger and less likely to catch fire than timber. Glass windows admitted more sunlight than ever before. Chimneys carried smoke safely outside. Iron stoves heated rooms more efficiently while using less fuel. Cooking became easier. Homes became cleaner. Winter nights grew a little warmer. Progress often arrived through countless small improvements rather than one dramatic invention. Perhaps the greatest revolution came with water. For thousands of years, people had carried buckets from wells, rivers, or public pumps. Now, cities began installing networks of underground pipes.
Fresh water flowed directly into homes. Indoor sinks became increasingly common. Later came bathrooms with flushing toilets. Today, turning a faucet feels completely ordinary. Yet for much of human history, it would have seemed almost magical. Clean water transformed health as much as comfort. Diseases spread less easily. Daily chores required less effort. Entire routines quietly changed. Lighting also evolved. For countless generations, evenings had depended upon candles, oil lamps, or fireplaces. These produced smoke, limited light, and constant fire risks. Gas lighting arrived first in many cities. Streets glowed after sunset. Homes became brighter. Then, toward the end of the 19th century, electricity appeared. At first, only wealthy families could afford electric lighting, but gradually it spread to ordinary homes. Imagine seeing an electric light bulb for the very first time after spending your entire life by candlelight. It must have felt extraordinary. Darkness itself had been transformed.
Electricity soon powered much more than lights. Fans cooled hot summer rooms. Doorbells announced visitors. Later came refrigerators, vacuum cleaners, washing machines, radios. Each invention saved time. Tasks that once consumed entire days gradually became easier. Home life slowly shifted away from constant physical labor. Families gained something precious: free time. Architecture changed as well. Large glass windows brightened living spaces. Decorative wallpaper became fashionable. Carpets covered wooden floors. Separate dining rooms appeared in many middle-class homes. Bedrooms became increasingly private. Children sometimes even had rooms of their own. This idea would have amazed families living in medieval cottages. The concept of personal space was quietly expanding. Meanwhile, another important form of housing returned in a new way: apartment buildings. Ancient Rome had known crowded apartments centuries earlier. Now, modern cities embraced them again. Tall brick and stone buildings allowed thousands of people to live close to factories, offices, and transportation. Elevators, invented during the 19th century, made even taller buildings practical. Without elevators, few people wished to climb many flights of stairs each day. With them, cities could finally grow upward instead of outward. The skyline itself began changing. Suburbs also emerged. As transportation improved through trains, trams, and later automobiles, many families no longer needed to live beside their workplaces. They could travel each morning and return each evening. Quiet neighborhoods developed beyond crowded city centers. Houses gained small gardens. Children played in safer streets. Trees lined sidewalks. The dream of owning a detached family home became increasingly common. For many people, home represented peace after the noise of industrial life.
The Industrial Revolution also transformed the furniture inside houses. Factories mass-produced chairs, tables, cabinets, beds. Ordinary families could now purchase items that previously required skilled craftsmen. Homes became more comfortable and more personal. Photographs decorated walls, books filled shelves, pianos entertained guests. The interior of the house slowly reflected the personalities of the people living there, not simply their ability to survive. Yet industrial progress came with costs. Factories filled the air with smoke. Coal dust covered rooftops. Crowded neighborhoods sometimes lacked proper sanitation, despite technological advances. Children often worked long hours before returning to cramped homes. History reminds us that progress rarely arrives without challenges. Every improvement created new questions. How should cities grow? How could housing remain affordable? How could comfort reach everyone? These questions continue today. As the 20th century approached, another wave of innovation prepared to reshape the home once again. Steel frames allowed skyscrapers to reach incredible heights. Concrete transformed construction. Telephones connected distant families. Television entered living rooms. Computers arrived decades later. The simple fireplace that had once gathered prehistoric families around a glowing flame was gradually joined by entirely new centers of attention. The history of houses had entered the modern age, but the story was not yet complete. One final chapter remains: a future where homes can think, respond, and perhaps one day even build themselves.
The evening is quiet. A gentle light glows in the hallway. The temperature inside your home feels just right. Not because someone adjusted a fireplace or opened a window.
but because tiny computers hidden within the walls quietly made the decision for you. Outside, the world moves faster than ever before. Cars travel at incredible speeds. Messages cross oceans in less than a second. Machines perform tasks that once required dozens of people. Yet, despite all this remarkable technology, we still end each day in the same place our ancestors longed for thousands of years ago: home. It may look different from a cave, a Roman villa, or a medieval cottage, but its purpose remains beautifully familiar. It is where we rest, where we feel safe, where memories quietly gather over time. Tonight, as our journey through history comes to an end, let us step inside the homes of today and imagine the homes of tomorrow. Modern houses are unlike anything our distant ancestors could have imagined. With the press of a button, lights brighten an entire room. Hot water arrives instantly. Food stays fresh for weeks inside refrigerators. Washing machines quietly clean clothing while we sleep. Heating and air conditioning keep temperatures comfortable in every season. The countless inventions of the past 2 centuries have transformed daily life so completely that many of them now seem ordinary. Yet each convenience represents generations of human creativity. Every faucet, every window, every electrical outlet, every insulated wall carries a story stretching back through thousands of years. One of the most fascinating developments is the rise of the smart home. Tiny sensors monitor temperature, lighting, and security. Some homes can recognize when their owners arrive. Lights switch on automatically. Doors lock themselves at night. Thermostats learn daily routines and quietly adjust the temperature before anyone notices the change. Voice assistants answer questions, play music, or remind families of important appointments. Although these technologies feel wonderfully modern, they continue a very ancient goal: making home more comfortable. Every generation has searched for better shelter. Today's tools simply happen to use computers instead of stone or wood. Cities continue reaching towards the sky. Glass skyscrapers contain thousands of apartments stacked one above another. Some buildings include gardens high above the streets. Others feature swimming pools, libraries, playgrounds, and even small parks shared by residents. Vertical neighborhoods have become ordinary in many parts of the world. People may live hundreds of feet above the ground, yet they still decorate their homes with photographs, favorite books, and familiar furniture. No matter how high we build, the desire to create a welcoming space never disappears. At the same time, many people are choosing to live differently. Tiny houses have become increasingly popular. These compact homes often measure only a few hundred square feet. Every shelf, every staircase, every piece of furniture serves multiple purposes. The philosophy is surprisingly simple: own fewer things, use space more wisely, spend more time living rather than maintaining possessions. In many ways, these tiny homes echo the practical shelters of our prehistoric ancestors. Sometimes history quietly circles back to where it began. Environmental concerns are also reshaping architecture. Around the world, architects are designing homes that use less energy and produce less waste. Solar panels capture sunlight. Rainwaters is collected for gardens. Walls provide better insulation. Large windows reduce the need for artificial lighting. Green roofs covered with plants help cool buildings during summer. Many of these ideas are not entirely new. Ancient Persian wind catchers, Chinese courtyards, Japanese natural ventilation all remind us that sustainable building has deep historical roots. Modern technology often improves upon lessons learned centuries ago. Scientists and engineers continue imagining even more remarkable possibilities. Some researchers are experimenting with houses created using large-scale 3D printers. Instead of laying one brick at a time, machines gradually build entire walls using carefully controlled layers of concrete or other materials. Construction that once required months might someday take only days.
Others are developing homes capable of generating nearly all the energy they need from the sun and wind. Future houses may become almost entirely self-sufficient. Far beyond Earth, architects have begun asking an extraordinary question. What kind of house would humans build on the Moon or on Mars? Without breathable air, without forests, without rivers, every wall would protect against radiation, extreme temperatures, and the harsh environment of space. Some concepts suggest building homes beneath the surface. Others propose inflatable habitats covered by local soil for protection. Although these ideas sound like science fiction today, so too would indoor plumbing have seemed magical to a medieval farmer. History reminds us never to underestimate human imagination. Despite all these technological advances, something remarkable has remained unchanged. Families still gather around meals.
Children still create memories in familiar rooms. Friends still visit one another for conversation. People still decorate homes with objects carrying personal meaning. Photographs, paintings, books, flowers, favorite chairs, a comfortable blanket. Technology changes. Human nature changes very slowly. The emotional meaning of home has survived every civilization we have explored. Think back to our journey began. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, a small group of people gathered around a fire beneath an open sky. They owned almost nothing. No walls surrounded them, no roof sheltered them. Yet they sat close together because it felt safe. That simple feeling became the foundation of every house ever built. From mammoth bone shelters to mud brick villages, from Egyptian homes beside the Nile to Roman villas with beautiful courtyards, from smoky medieval cottages to elegant Japanese houses, from colonial cabins to modern apartments reaching toward the clouds. The materials changed, the designs changed, the technology changed, but one quiet truth remained. A house becomes a home not because of stone, wood, glass, or steel, but because of the people who fill it with life. As night gently settles across the world, millions of lights begin glowing in countless homes. Some shine through apartment windows overlooking busy cities. Others glow softly from quiet cottages beside forests. Some illuminate mountain villages. Others sparkle across deserts, islands, and coastlines. Each light represents someone ending another ordinary day. Someone preparing dinner, reading a book, sharing laughter, telling a bedtime story, or simply enjoying the peaceful comfort of being home. And perhaps thousands of years from now, future historians will look back upon our own houses with the same quiet curiosity that we have shown to those who came before us. Because every home, no matter how humble or magnificent, becomes part of the long and beautiful story of humanity. So as you drift peacefully towards sleep tonight, remember that the place where you rest is far more than a building. It is the newest chapter in a history that began beneath the open sky, long before there were walls, long before there were cities, when the very first humans searched for nothing more than a safe place to spend the night. Sleep well, and thank you for joining this journey through the complete history of houses. End of documentary.